It's Saturday. Welcome to Behind the Couch, everyone. I'm Dr. Shiloh. I feel like I should have a different name today. Like, you're really good at making up names.
I think you should be like, if you're gonna be like a gangster mall from the 40s, it's got to be Dr. Cookie.
That works. And what's your name tonight, Dr. Scott?
I'm Dr. Emil Schuffhausen from the Schuffhausen Institute in Vienna, and my services are very expensive.
Oh, I bet they are. Gonna be a little saucy tonight. Oh, look what I have. Using my vintage.
Oh, are those the glasses we gave you?
Yes.
Oh, I love them.
Tonight.
Yeah, I won't go into it, but I had to share with Shiloh last night that I had a bizarre night last night, and I came home and the first thing as I walked through the door, I looked at my husband Dan and I was like, "Can I have one of your magic cocktails, please? I need it like really stacked." Yeah. It was crazy, and I had it in that glass.
You don't want to process anything? You okay? Yeah.
Okay.
This is a safe space with these people that we have here, our lovely crowd. It's up to you.
I want to be careful because I was talking to one of my several beloved sisters this morning, and I did not reveal to her that I witnessed the aftermath of a crime last night right outside my house. And it was quite surreal and bloody. And, I am fine. I am fine. All of my neighbors are fine. Unfortunately, a poor young man who was in our neighborhood, I guess partying or something, he did not fare so well, and I witnessed it, the aftermath. So shit gets real. Like when it gets real,
Because you were saying it was surreal, and that was the perfect word for it. When you come up on something like that, totally unexpected, just coming home, after a work week. So
well, and you saw this kind of stuff as law enforcement all the time. I mean, you would see dead bodies, or you would see people at their last moments. I mean, I've seen a lot of people at their last moments in hospital settings, not in a public setting. That was quite shocking.
It is so different. But yes, very surreal, and just feels like an out-of-body experience. And I'm surprised you slept last night. I was like, oh, he's definitely not going to get any sleep. He's just going to be wired. But good. I'm glad you did.
I don't know. Maybe that's shock. Maybe the shock was like a tranquilizer for me or something. So
yeah. Welcome, Esther. Glad you can make it.
Esther, Jason. Oh my gosh, we've got a whole crowd this time. Thank you so much, guys.
Well, let's see.
Well, we should do. Everybody here knows why we're doing the vintage thing, but but you want to kind of recap that for everybody?
Yeah, especially we're going to throw this up on YouTube, and I feel like we've had a ton of new subscribers this week. So we don't do this every week. I think the last YouTube video I was in a Dodgers baseball t-shirt, so that's my norm. But Scott and I are in the middle of a series on the podcast that are all about vintage Los Angeles crimes. I mean, this is sort of like our theme for our show as far as aesthetics and, what we try to bring to the title and living up to the title of LA Not So Confidential. So, we've covered, let's see, a crime at the Cecil Hotel in the 40s. We've done the Winehouse chicken coop murders in the 20s.
Wineville.
I'm sorry, Wine.
The Amy Winehouse chicken coop murders.
Wouldn't that be a crossover? Woo! So we're going to do a couple more in March. So we are, Shannon says, imagine that hair. Woo! We're in the middle of our series right now. Last Thursday, we did this watch party event, which it blew me away. It was so much fun. I could hardly keep up with the film because of the dozen or so people that were there watching with us. And it was just so much fun and hilarious to sit in my bed and watch this noir film with.
And that was all your idea. I mean, that we've been talking about having a watch party, but that was your idea to do a noir film. And that's going to be a regular thing. So thank you for that idea.
It sounds like people had fun, and I had a blast. I thought it was great. We should do it again in a couple of weeks. So, or at least for our patrons. But yeah, it was just a blast. So we're kind of keeping this going with this theme. What are you laughing at? What'd you catch?
Jason was like, there was a film. I mean, that was part of it. I mean, we definitely were splitting our focus as the film itself was actually pretty good and has some really great moments. There are a couple of really kind of stellar acting moments.
Oh, yeah.
And there were certainly some themes of, sort of psychopathy and domestic violence and big time anger management issues. Like, it was big. But the conversation, I mean, I wanted to add in some trivia. So I had done like some research so I could cut and paste some of the biggest trivia about the actors in the movie. But everybody and most of you were here, everybody contributed to that conversation in a really spectacular way. Shannon, Pia, everybody.
Yeah.
We were having fun, but there was some really interesting conversation about sort of like, it was a different time, and, sort of male and female role norms were pretty distinctly prescribed at that time.
Yeah, we watched In a Lonely Place. I think it was made in 1950. It might be a little tad earlier than that, but I hadn't seen it before. It was great. I was so happy. Like, I randomly picked something.
I hadn't seen it either. You picked one I had not seen. Yeah.
It was perfection. So much fun. We hope to do it again. And tonight, you guys had, we had so many suggestions from listeners and on social media about what cases we should cover in this series. And we can't get to all of them. So we thought we would take the Get Vocals to do that. So we have some suggestions. Gosh, I feel like this time is going to go really fast tonight. So I want to jump into our story. If anyone wants to come on, please, I'm going to leave these spots open. Feel free. One thing, we're going to make a change at the suggestion of a patron. We're going to start, I'm really liking my arch on my eyebrow, by the way.
You're on fleek, completely on
fleek. So we are going to start doing trigger warnings at the beginning of our episodes. We should actually go back and probably do them for all of them if we can. So I'm going to give a trigger warning for mine right now. So the story I'm going to talk about talks about sexual assault, penetration with a foreign object, and murder as the result of possibly a violent sexual assault. So I am going to talk about the Fatty Arbuckle case. So I think, everyone's kind of heard of this a little bit. And this was the first time I really dug a little bit deeper to know what this story was all about. But I think the urban legend version of this story that's mostly told is not, in fact, the truth. You may know this story as one of kind of this Hollywood party gone wrong. It's 1921. There's a violent rape, possibly with a foreign object like a champagne bottle, of an actress by a very large, unruly actor that ultimately led to the woman's death. And there were 3 trials that followed, actually 3 court hearings. They weren't exactly all trials, which I'll get into. And each of them acquitted him of her murder. So Rebecca nailed it, huge Weinstein vibes, but at least this man had some trials. My sources for this were the incredible podcast, You Must Remember This, a podcast by Karina Longworth. All of her series are amazing, especially if you like vintage Hollywood stuff, as well as an article put out by the BBC that was written by Jude Sheeran in 2001. So here we go. Roscoe Fatty Arbuckle, he was a stage actor turned film star in the silent era, like the 19-teens. He grew up as a singer, even as a child, and had a rough childhood. He was physically abused by his father. He left at the age of 16 to go pursue vaudeville. So he goes off to vaudeville, ends up marrying another stage actress who he was with for a very long time. And he was really described as a really magical comedic actor. He discovered Buster Keaton and helped mentor Charlie Chaplin. So he eventually comes to Los Angeles and gets involved in the film industry, the silent film industry, for that time, and becomes such a star that he ends up having his own production company. He is making a ton of money and has one of the biggest contracts at that time. And then eventually, just blows up, huge star, literally and figuratively. He's a very, very big man, hence the nickname. And then he separates his wife, but they keep that out of the public eye because they thought that actually a star of his capacity couldn't survive a public divorce. So they choose to keep it under wraps. So he's our sort of main person in this story. And then we have Virginia Rapé. So Virginia was a model and a fashion designer and an actress. And she also had rough beginnings. She was orphaned at 11. And she started modeling at 16 and was very successful as a model. You must remember this, the articles that they dug up described her as what we would liken to a supermodel these days. She was traveling the country, appearing in fashion shows, walking in fashion shows, in malls, not malls. They didn't have malls then. Department stores. That's what I'm looking for. And actually decided to start designing fashion and was very successful at it. She was in the newspapers a lot, being interviewed, somewhat of a feminist, really wanted women to use their creativity and get out there and do these sort of creative jobs rather than just being secretaries somewhere. So she ends up coming to Los Angeles. She was kind of in the high society of San Francisco when she was more into the fashion industry. And then she eventually moves to LA and she begins dating an executive at a studio. And it happens to be the studio where Fatty Arbuckle is under contract. So she knows him through that. And then, just kind of the same circle. She's dating the executive. She gets some parts because of dating this executive, but small parts, not much. But by the summer of 1921, she's 30. Her boyfriend leaves and goes to New York, and the acting work kind of dries up for her. So this all leads up to an incident on Labor Day weekend of 1921. Virginia happens to be going up to San Francisco with a couple of friends of hers, a male friend that she knows, and then another woman comes along that she doesn't know super well, but they're getting along well and hanging out. And it just so happens that Fatty Arbuckle is up there and some of his friends are up there, and he's basically going to throw this party at the St. Francis, which is now the West End St. Francis. You can still actually rent out the suite on the 12th floor where this all happened. I told Scott that earlier. He was like, yeah, no, that's gross. We might go to the Lizzie Borden house.
I will gladly stay in the Lizzie Borden house, but I'm not going to stay in the Fatty Arbuckle suite unless, I don't know. Now you're really revealing more information than I knew about that case. So
yeah, we'll see.
If it's well appointed, I might consider it.
Okay. So he's there and there's this very close-knit circle. A friend of his sees Virginia in the lobby of a different hotel and basically invites her to this party that they're going to have. And so she tells her friend, hey, I'm going to go check out this party at the St. Francis. If it sucks, I'll be back in 20 minutes. Well, turns out, I guess it was pretty fun because she calls her friend up and says, hey, come hang out. So the female friend comes to go hang out with her, and they're there for hours. I think their male friend asked if he could drive them back, and they were like, no, we're having fun. We're going to stay longer. So they were drinking. I love the way this sounds. I've never had one, but they were drinking orange blossoms with gin. Guess that's a thing. Sounds nice. I don't know.
Gin and orange juice?
I don't know. I'm
gonna look that up because it sounds.
Somebody look at the recipe. And they were drinking the orange blossoms and they were drinking scotch. So at one point, as the first story goes, she goes to use the restroom in Arbuckle's room, and he has a room in the suite. And basically, he enters the room after her, locks the door behind him, and Hours later, she comes to and wakes up, and she's in a different room on a different bed, and she's in severe abdominal pain. A doctor is called. Her friend has a doctor come. The first doctor shoots her up with morphine and says, she just needs to rest. So her friend's like, that's not cutting it. She calls another doctor, and he says, no, she's suffering from alcohol poisoning. She just needs to rest, and it'll move its way through her system. 3 days later, she is no better. She's been basically holed up in this hotel. They thought it better just to keep her there for whatever reason. She ends up getting transferred to a sanitarium where she is finally seen by some doctors, and she's diagnosed with an infection of the abdominal lining, which they say is caused by what they can tell either a ruptured fallopian tube or a ruptured bladder. So this sounds awful, and she's been in this state for at least 3 days. And a day after being taken to the sanitarium, basically, a little less than a week after this whole incident, Virginia Rapé dies, and she's she was 30 years old. So an initial autopsy, and I use autopsy loosely, the doctors that were working there, the doctors that were working there decided to do their own autopsy. They said they couldn't get a hold of the coroner. Basically, they found some bruising on her upper arms, her thighs, but said there was no evidence of sexual assault. Finally, the real coroner, of course, the sanitarium's like, hey, coroner, when are you going to come pick up her body? And the coroner's like, I had no idea. And he does his own examination, and yes, he finds the bruises as well, but he also finds what he said was chronic inflammation of the bladder, and that the bladder looked as if it had been punctured by some external force. So here's where the theories start as to what that could be. There's a couple of different accounts that come out. Her friend Maud said that basically Virginia was in the room with Arbuckle for about 30 minutes before Maud goes over there and starts knocking on the door. And basically he opens up the door, and Virginia's on the bed, kind of writhing around in pain, holding her stomach, and her clothes are torn. Arbuckle gets on a steamship and flees to Los Angeles after this incident. And basically reporters are waiting for him at his house. And he says, I was never alone with her. LAPD ends up doing a search of his buddy's house and finds her torn clothing there. So almost like they had brought this evidence back from the crime scene. And he says, I just took them home because I thought they'd be good for rags. So yeah, terrible, terrible story there. Hang on, let me drink out of my beautiful glass. So they end up arresting Arbuckle they charge him initially they go straight with murder as a result of a perpetrated rape. His movies were all pulled from the West Coast. Surprisingly, her movies, in which she had smaller parts, end up getting re-released, and this makes her a bigger movie star in death than she was when she was living. It's kind of macabre in the way they, almost like a publicity stunt to get some more money out of these movies. So there's a grand jury, and there are 2 nurses at the grand jury who testify, and they're from the sanitarium. One nurse said that Virginia had told her that she had been intimate with Arbuckle. So she used those words, almost implying that this was consensual, that this was something that either was consensual or she was ashamed of, or maybe she was a victim of a sexual assault and there was shame around that. And then another nurse reported that Victoria told her that she had been having some internal problems for about 6 weeks. So it seems like we have like this ongoing medical issue that is being validated by the doctors, as well as the, during the autopsy of this chronic bladder issue, and then this possible sexual assault happening. So a coroner, he gets on the stand at the grand jury, and he again says it looks as if the bladder was ruptured, and they press him to say, well, what do you mean ruptured? Do you mean like naturally? And he said, well, no, with some force. So the some force is really where they're able to then say that there is enough to charge him with murder because of this magic word of force. And then they press him even further, and he basically gives an opinion kind of out of nowhere that it could have been done with a foreign object, a finger, something like that. But I mean,
that's where that whole part starts. That's where that rumor starts. And we're not saying that a rape didn't occur.
Right.
Like it could have occurred. She could have had, I mean, clearly at bare minimum, if she had alcohol poisoning, then she was not able to give consent.
Well, of course.
That whole concept of consent at that time.
Exactly.
But press, even I remember Hearst at the time, Randolph Hearst said that this incident sold more papers than the sinking of the Lusitania.
Oh, well, it's interesting because there's the podcast, You Must Remember This, goes into this whole dynamic about Hearst. And I guess he had put a bunch of money into Paramount Pictures, and it wasn't panning out very well. And so this was kind of a payback where he was just going to drag Arbuckle's name through the mud. Anyway, sidebar, go listen to that wonderful podcast if you want to hear more about that. So the coroner testifies in the grand jury, and then they end up doing a preliminary hearing. So a preliminary hearing, a grand jury says, yes, indict this person. A preliminary hearing is a hearing to see if there's enough evidence to move on with a trial. Very long, laborious process. The prelim is packed with female fans of Fatty Arbuckle, which I thought was so interesting because that's a phenomenon that we have seen throughout recent decades. And this was 100 years ago.
Wow.
So at the prelim, a maid testifies and says that I guess she was in the suite, and behind Arbuckle's bedroom door, she heard a woman scream no, and then she heard a man say shut up. The defense put on no witnesses for the prelim, and basically the judge said, this maid is the most believable witness because she was the only one that wasn't drunk there. So we're going to go ahead and move ahead, but we're only charging him with manslaughter. So the charges get reduced a bit, and then they go to trial number 1. So there's the hearing, and then there's 2 trials. So hearing number 1, Arbuckle gets on the stand. He testifies. He says that he had gone into his bedroom to change into a robe. And when he sort of came out of one section of the bedroom, Virginia was in his bathroom vomiting. So he picks her up, he puts her on the bed. She rolls off the bed at some point and is just in pain, clutching her stomach, doubled over. Then the treating doctor, like a personal treating doctor, testifies that yes, he had been treating Virginia for years for bladder problems. And there ends up being a deadlocked jury. So it's very interesting. There was a couple of women on the jury. They were made to feel very unsafe as part of being part of the jury. And then there was this whole conversation afterwards of, well, maybe women shouldn't be on juries where sexual assault is involved because they see it as too awful. Hang on.
Wow.
Let me take a sip. Yeah.
Wow. I need a drink.
I know. So with the deadlock jury, they try him again. And new witnesses come up again. There ends up being a secretary from the sanitarium that said that she spoke to Virginia, and Virginia told her that Arbuckle basically took her by the hand in the bedroom, lays her down on the bed, and then lays on top of her. And then she can't remember what happens after that, like almost as if she had like blacked out from the pain. So it's really interesting. We have this really large man that could have, and a woman that has a bladder that's about to rupture, maybe from vomiting, maybe from just her chronic illness. And then he lays on top of her. And that's all she can remember. And the secretary seemed like, it didn't seem like she had just come forward with this story. She said, I hadn't been subpoenaed until now. Nobody reached out to me to ask me my story. And we know that happens a lot, especially in sexual assault cases. So the jury deliberates for, give me a guess of how long you think they deliberate. Random. I know.
I'm going to say 2 hours.
Shannon says 1 hour, not long, 5 minutes.
Ooh.
5 minutes, and they have a written statement that would have taken longer than 5 minutes to actually write. So there's all this, suspicion around, did the defense provide them with this statement? Because it's like, this man shouldn't even be in this court. This is so ridiculous. And his name's been dragged through the mud. But anyway, he gets acquitted. So he sort of, his career is done. He loses his multi-million-dollar contract. Nobody will hire him. He does go back to Hollywood. He ended up divorcing his other wife, and he gets remarried. And he does some directing under some other names, and eventually makes some appearances in some films under a different name as well. But his career was pretty much shot. So he ends up dying of a heart attack at age 46. And just, one of those things, we will never know. But he did go through 2 trials, and I just don't think there was enough to convict him. Especially with some doctors saying there wasn't any evidence of sexual assault. I don't know. It's a tough one. What do you guys think? What are your thoughts?
I want to, while people are adding their thoughts or that they want to jump on, I do want to say, like, as much as I was kind of grossed out saying about staying in his home, Fatty Arbuckle also has or had a bungalow, which was very common back in the 40s and 50s, is you had your primary home, right, which was your mansion or your large home that was out in sort of the surrounding area of Los Angeles now, which has become a huge metropolitan area. But there were definitive places that were separated by lots of, kind of desert land, or where we are, subtropical desert land. So he had a 3-bedroom bungalow, sort of Spanish Adobe bungalow on La Cienega Drive in West Hollywood. And it's been a restaurant for years. It's been several different restaurants over the years, primarily gay restaurants back in the 80s and 90s. Mm-hmm. But and one time it was called Arbuckles, which it did not do well when it was called Arbuckles. And then I think it was the Blue Parrot. Yeah. So I sure realized as you were telling that story is like, oh, I have been in Arbuckle's home. What
would be the cross street there? La Cienega?
La Cienega and Santa Monica Boulevard, about two short blocks down. And then he had a huge Tudor mansion on West Adams. And if you Google Fatty Arbuckle, West Adams, Los Angeles, it's really a magnificent, magnificent home. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, people are saying at least he should have been convicted of rape.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's very interesting. It was a very interesting time. I mean, it's this poor woman, there were a couple ways in which the newspapers and the media was so involved in spinning the story. And either it was, they would only use older pictures like when she was younger, older pictures of her to kind of highlight the fragility of her and that he was this monster. And then towards the end, it started to get spun of, she gave everyone on the studio lot crabs, and she was such a whore. And,
of course, that's what you do when you want to change the narrative. The go-to is to make the woman a whore or a slut, which is infuriating.
Yeah, exactly. So I saw someone put up a recipe for orange blossoms. I'll have to get on that.
Fantastic.
Hi, everyone. everyone. Thanks for joining. Oh my gosh, it's like double than when I started. Good to see you, everybody.
If you're thinking about starting a podcast, let us tell you about Anchor.
First off, it's free, and you can record and edit your show through your computer or phone, or import your show from whatever recording software you already use.
Anchor will then distribute your show for you so it can be heard on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen.
And probably the best part, you can start making money with no minimum listenership.
It's everything you need to start a podcast from start to finish in one place, and it was a super easy switch for us.
Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. That's anchor.fm.
So what are you talking about tonight, Scott?
So that's a great case to start with. And I think you came up with both of the ideas for our subjects tonight. Both of these
listeners did, definitely.
What's that?
Our listeners came up with these ideas.
Oh, they did. Right. Okay. So our listeners, I mean, this next one actually could probably be explored by us for several reasons in a much longer format. And I love that the commonality of you putting these two cases together is that it's a great example of crimes being committed and people being treated poorly, and history really obfuscating and getting a lot of facts wrong. So our next one is the story of Frances Farmer. So most people that are into noir or classic movies know who Frances Farmer was. A really, really gifted actress that was primarily working between 1936 and 1959. Her career just really shot off, of course, at the beginning as a young ingenue in Hollywood. She had come from the Midwest, and her life was really, I'm going to say, immortalized by a movie that came out in the 80s, 1982, called Frances, where she was portrayed by Jessica Lange. It was a fantastic cast. It's a fantastic story. Unfortunately, it gets a lot incorrect. It does get the tragedy and trigger warning. There are some things here that are concerning as well, regarding how she was treated later in her life. So I'm going to read from a really well-written mini biography that is on IMDb. I would hope that everyone here is familiar with the Internet Movie Database. I used to use it as a casting director all the time. And there are aspects of, different chapters of my life that is, although I'm working in as a psychologist today, I'm still got casting director brain sometimes. I'm like, wait, that person was in that movie. And so I'm always like, I'll be watching something with Dan and we're on IMDb trying to.
I use it every single day. That app is probably in my top 10.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing. And there's a Broadway version too, which is really spectacular as well. It gives you a whole history of everybody that's worked on Broadway. Mm-hmm. So Frances was born in Seattle. In 1935, she went to Hollywood. And back then, the way entertainment worked was radically different from how movies work today, in that you signed with a studio and you signed contracts, especially if you didn't have power as a young actor, you had to sign a longer contract. And it was basically some indentured servitude, because basically you were going to do exactly what they told you to do for that 7 years. And sometimes that might be you pissed the wrong person off, or you didn't sleep with the right studio head, and they would basically, pay you pennies, and you wouldn't be released from your contract. You couldn't go or do anything anywhere else. And of course, the contract system finally got dissolved years later by very powerful actors who felt like their careers were being taken advantage of. Clearly, one of the ways you could work around the studio system was, as your star was on the rise, if you became like really box office gold, then you had a little bit more pull with the studio heads. But as we know, there's a lot has been written about how actors, particularly female actors, were really chewed up by the system. And Frances Farmer was a really gifted, beautiful actress, but had some substance abuse issues that clearly started exhibiting themselves as what we would consider self-medication for the stressors she was under. So after her death, her life gets made into a movie called Frances, starring Jessica Lange. And it's a really great dramatic retelling. And what it does capture is the challenges in the studio system. It challenges the really toxic enmeshed relationship she had with her mother, which was quite significant. And that has been verified by Frances's sister long after she died in a book that came out later that was corrective. So there have been 3 notable books about Frances's life. And what we found out is the one that the movie Frances is based on was, let's just say that the writer took a lot of creative license and liberty with aspects of her life that stuck around as rumors for years that just weren't true. So she had the 7-year contract with Paramount, and she was making these movies. I think, I would say this: there's not a lot that she did that was really notable, but you could also conjecture that she really wasn't given a chance to have movie roles where she could really shine, and she was sort of a work in progress. In 1943, after a decade in the industry, what became really noticeable is that she had an incredible alcohol problem, and she had several driving under the influence, major car wrecks, came close to killing people, blackout drunk many times. And this was a huge publicity problem for the studios, because the studios, kind of like publicists do today, they monitor every part of your life, and they create sort of this veneer of truth that may not be always accurate. So what started happening is that her mother came to Los Angeles and was able to, excuse me, and was able to get legal guardianship of her and then have her committed. Her mother came into town after several driving incidents under the influence. One in particular is really interesting because it's not easy for us to think about this as a real thing because we're so used to turning on headlights. There was a blackout period in the 40s that was, you didn't drive with your lights on, and there were curfews due to the war effort. Oh. And she had her headlights on bright during a wartime dim out zone. And so she was charged with a DUI and arrested. And then she forgot, or she just neglected to pay her bail. Mm-hmm. So a warrant was issued for her arrest. And then she got also some charges filed against her by other studio employees, like a hairdresser and a costumer, when they were trying to kind of wrangle her into getting ready for a scene to be shot while she was under the influence.
Was she being assaultive, or?
Yeah, she was being assaultive. Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of information on that, but let's just say that it would have been really significant that someone of that stature, hair and makeup, making those kind of accusations at the time, because it's not making it against the actor, it's making it against the entire studio system that holds a lot of power. So, yeah.
It must have been bad then for them to speak up.
Exactly. So her mother gets a guardianship and has Frances committed to Washington Western State Hospital for the first time in 1944. And then after brief stays with what we would consider really barbaric treatments, really, really barbaric treatments for alcoholism and mental illness at the time, you would be alternating freezing cold baths, ice baths, and then heat baths, wrapped in cold sheets, a lot of isolation, various bizarre diet things.
What year was this again?
This was 1943 was the first one. But then she went, I'm sorry, 1944. Then 2 other commitments followed, one for several months in 1945 to 1946, and the longest one happening between 1946 of April and March of 1950. So almost a year.
Oh my gosh.
Really, really significant. She had several marriages. And by this time, like 1954, she had married a blue collar worker, a guy named Alfred Lobley, and then left him and moved to a very rural area of Eureka, California, where she worked anonymously in a photo studio. So she was able to revive her career, including through this new medium of television. And so what I'm doing is I'm skipping over like a lot of drama that is portrayed in the movie, which the movie is worth watching. But here's the thing that was reported in the movie that was not accurate at all. The author said that she had had a lobotomy while she was on one of her psychiatric holds. And lobotomy, for those of you who don't know, is a really brutal and no longer practiced. I mean, we have chemical lobotomies, and sometimes there are lobotomies performed when people had severe seizure disorders.
Sure.
But the old lobotomy, and trigger warning here, basically, if it was with an implement that was somewhat like an ice pick, or an ice pick shape with a loop on the end, and basically they would go, and if it was a transorbital lobotomy, it would go through the inside of the eye, push the eyeball out, go through the eye socket in the back, and scramble the brain, scramble the part of the prefrontal cortex up here. It could also be done through the nasal cavity. And that in itself is a whole story. There are several podcasts about the completely fucked up doctor who did these basically as a traveling show, traveling across the U.S., giving people lobotomies as a cure-all for all sorts of things. And
once again, I hate our profession and where it came from.
We're talking really about a very dark period in psychology and psychiatry. But, there's always going to be bad people. And this was at a time when there were very few treatments and there was no oversight, and you could kind of put your shingle up and say you were a doctor, and there was no, who's going to check your background. Right. So the lobotomy was presented as this magic cure-all for back pain. Also really like horrific things that were considered inappropriate at the time. Many people don't know, or maybe don't remember, that at that time, and another trigger warning for being explicit, masturbation was considered to be extremely unhealthy. And it was the mark of an unhealthy mind, and participating in masturbation for both men and women was supposed to lead to all sorts of ills, like all sorts of insanity and physical ills. And so what became a treatment for kids that had been placed on psychiatric holds for masturbation, they gave them lobotomies.
My dad says, I thought you'd go blind. That's the old wives' tale. Don't masturbate, go blind.
Or grow hair on your palms.
Yeah.
Catholics, I'd be shaving my palms on a regular basis. But
how awful. Let's just scramble your brain to fix things like back pain. But God forbid.
That makes little sense. So anyway, the great thing is that Frances did not receive a lobotomy. It was used for dramatic effect in the movie. But what likely did happen were some probably very, very harsh treatments that were standard of care at that time for psychiatric holds. It would not have been out of the ordinary for her to have received some kind of electrical shock therapy,
right?
What we call ECT now. ECT actually is used today, much more controlled settings, and for people with chronic, severe, dangerously severe depression.
Yes.
ECT can be quite fantastic, and you're completely sedated, and you're given, the right amount of shock to the right amount of brain. That's not what's happening at this time. At this time in the psychiatric community, you're basically hooked up to electrodes. They shoved a rubber rod in your mouth to keep you from cracking your teeth, and they turned on the juice. Yeah,
they show a depiction of that actually in the movie Changeling. So when Angelina Jolie is in the hospital, some of the women who are, acting out, they get the ECT treatment.
So one of the things that we do know, that regardless of the fact that she was not traumatized by a lobotomy, because that was fictional, what was really true was she was relentlessly, especially in that long period, the almost year-long hospitalization, she was repeatedly raped by orderlies at the hospital, abused, tortured, starved, and she was known to have had like numerous significant scarring on her limbs from the number of rat bites that she had when she placed solitary. Just absolutely beautiful. Terrific. I mean, beautiful, not beautiful, brutal.
Yeah.
I'm a sociopath for saying that. Just brutal.
That was the test you just failed.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's an interesting scene at the end of Frances where there's a parallel storyline. The truth is that she came back after all this, and she was like found, after she was doing these anonymous jobs, and somebody got her on a TV show. She came back on the Ed Sullivan Show. She came back on an episode of a show called This Is Your Life, which was sort of a feel-good review. And people were like, oh, where has Frances Farmer been all this time? And because of that, she was actually offered a job in television hosting showing classic movies and interviewing the actors, who had formerly been her peers.
Oh, wow.
Interviewing them. So what's interesting is the show is like, she actually was really pretty good at this, but the way they portray it in the movie Frances is they have Jessica Lange completely zombied out.
Like just propped up and...
Yeah, like she's propped up, and that's not what was happening. What was happening, though, is she was still drinking, which was still a problem. And by this time, she had started to develop like a really serious smoking habit that had always existed, but now had got really significant, which led to her death from esophageal cancer in 1970. So,
whoa.
Yeah, I mean, there's the book that was written. There are several books, one by Radcliffe, Will There Really Be a Morning? Another one that's a fictionalized biography, Shadowland. That author, William Arnold, was actually taken to court by her estate because he had fabricated so many of the incidents, including the lobotomy. And he said that his sources were family members, physicians, nurses at Western State, where she was hospitalized. And later years, a lot of historians and fans of hers, including family members, dove in and were able to debunk many of the statements that were made. And finally, her sister, Edith Farmer Elliott, wrote a book called Look Back in Love that's considered to be a lot more realistic about what she went through and what she struggled with and the effect that her mother had on her life.
Right. Good. I'm glad there was something written by someone who actually cared about her.
Right.
Ooh, how tragic. I don't know how any woman survived this era, especially in Hollywood. I mean, Hollywood seemed, it was such this magical, glamorous fantasy, and it seemed horrific for women.
Well, and as we said in the chats earlier, I think that, Rebecca was the one that made the comment about Harvey Weinstein. And that's actually a really great parallel example. I mean, there are fantastic actresses where you go, well, whatever happened to Mira Sorvino? What happened to Ashley Judd?
Sure.
And countless others who didn't even get as far in their careers as these actresses did. And what happened was Harvey Weinstein. Yeah. The only reason that Gwyneth Paltrow was actually, Gwyneth Paltrow infuriates me for the Goop stuff, but I think that she is a naturally really gifted actress. Her gift for comedy is kind of impressive.
It really is.
The story behind her, she was getting really treated poorly and abused by Weinstein. And Brad Pitt basically walked into his office and threatened to strangle him. Yeah. And so she was able, and then he left her alone.
Right.
But who was there to advocate for these other actresses that didn't have someone to say those things? But Mira Sorvino, genius. If you ever saw the movie Mighty Aphrodite, which is problematic because it's a Woody Allen film.
Oh, but gosh. I feel an episode in the future on that with the new documentary.
Oh, I've
not watched it yet. So.
Yeah.
And it also, talking about Frances Farmer and conservatorship, people really want us to talk about Brittany too. So
Yeah,
conservatorship in general.
Yeah, I have so many mixed feelings, especially because that's part of the work I do. We should talk. We should schedule that for next time. I think that's a big one, so that people understand what conservatorship is. And I will say this, like some of the things that the reporters are saying about what conservatorship is in the state of California, it is not being represented well in the media at all. I mean, it's just not. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that will definitely be something that you can take a strong lead on, since that's what you do. And, hospitalizations of people seems very mysterious. And how can that happen? And how is it done? And that would be nice just to talk about. We really haven't gone into depth on something like that. So.
Yeah, Pia, thank you for that statement. I don't want to diminish Miss Paltrow's experiences, but she was always going to be okay. I think that's a really good observation. And, she had probably also, coming from the family that she came from, she also came from money. Sure. Like she came from a lot of money. She came from an established actress already. She had somebody fighting for her. There are other people and one of the things that's infuriating, especially Ashley Judd, is like Weinstein just poisoned the entire Hollywood about her, saying that she was insane. Nobody wanted to work for her. She was awful. It's just like, just because, she doesn't want to get near your slimy self. Ugh.
Yeah, I know. Wow. That's a very depressing story, if I'm just going to be honest, about poor Frances.
Yeah.
Jeez.
I mean, it's an interesting story that she actually did come back. Like, she had this career that came back, and she was respected for the television work that she did. But it's a tragic story how people get lost in the system, and, our natural tendency to soothe ourselves can really be expressed in unhealthy ways. If your self-medication or your self-soothing is to use substances, and that's your only go-to, that doesn't have many positive sequelae down the road.
And it sounds like for her, obviously her mental illness was never, really treated properly. And neither was her substance abuse disorder. I mean, so, you talk about like these years later when she came back to do this, hosting of this show, that it was still, or again, prevalent in her life. Almost the only part of kind of quiet respite that she had was when she went away and was doing these mundane jobs. And very interesting about the pressure of Hollywood too. I know we've been asked to do episode on like child actors, and
as Esther just even wrote, like Judy Garland, her story's been told over and over again, and it should be told. Like there's maybe there aren't a lot of good angles left that haven't been already covered, but that story should be told, because that abuse of child actors still happens today, not so much at the hands of studios, but at the hands of parents that are vicariously living out their own needs through their children's careers. Did you read that article that the actress, and I apologize that I can't think of her name, but she played Matilda. She was a child actress. She's great. And she's a writer now. Yeah, she just wrote a great article about her experiences that have been, triggered with Brittany. Mara Wilson, that's it. Yeah, it was such a great piece. Just at 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, the crazy things that people were asking her in interviews. And it's just, I don't know. Yeah, that's a whole another topic we could go down, of how young women are interviewed in the media and who they're supposed to be and how quickly they have to grow up in ways that they shouldn't. So, well, that's part of it. Also, what I do like as well is that, there was a case many years ago, if I can get the information, a lot of it's been buried, but there was a male casting director with a significant meth addiction and he is no longer alive. I think he either died of his meth intoxication or he killed himself. But he was going down he had been molesting young male actors for years. It was really awful. It was actually happened right before I got into casting, so it would have been probably mid to late 80s. But there are a lot of adult male actors, teens and adults, that get manipulated and sexually assaulted as well by men and women that have a lot of power in the entertainment industry. Yeah. What's great, I mean, it's an awful experience, but what is great is those actors and those celebrities are coming forward and they're being very vulnerable about what it feels like to be put in that place.
Is that the incident that documentary is on with, the Corey Haim, Corey Feldman, that whole circle?
This was involving that guy, but it was it wasn't so much about them. And Corey Feldman, I don't know. I mean, I can't imagine what he has been through, because he's, he really was a child that grew up in the system.
Right.
But he's been very cagey and very coy. And I would hope at this point that he would just really come and speak out. I would really wish he would just tell the truth or feel comfortable. And maybe he feels intimidated. I don't know what his motivations are, but he keeps hinting that he's going to tell these stories. And if he has something to say, I think that it would help people for him to say it.
I can't remember what the name of that documentary is that covers all of that, but I have a copy of it. I think your husband actually gave me a digital copy of it. But I was like, why is nobody talking about this, or how is this? That needs to be re-released on Netflix or something in this day and age.
Especially, that's what the Ashtar Kitty was saying too. The Corey Haim's story is particularly, because at least Corey Feldman survived, and Corey Haim clearly did not. Whatever trauma he was experiencing, he was not able to survive that.
Yeah, exactly. Wow. You know us, just keeping the good topics flowing. The feel good moments are just here. Gosh. Oh, man. Well, this was fun. You look really nice, Scott. It's nice.
Thank you.
Up.
As the lights have slowly gotten dimmer in the room.
Right. Yeah.
Thank you for posting the picture. That was our friend Deb's. We won't say what
birthday party it was.
How long ago? That was before Sydney.
No, Sydney. If you look at the picture closely, the full picture, she's grabbing onto my leg. So she's walking. She's probably 2. So it was maybe 7 years ago.
Oh my God. I have to go on a diet. Because man, I had some great cheekbones and a jawline at that time. So I got to get back be able to get back in that tux. That's a great tux I had.
You need to get in the tux. My boobs still don't fit this dress. I mean, what are you going to do? So I don't know. Give some of what you got to me and we'll figure it out.
Okay.
Well, thanks you guys for joining us once again. We are so appreciative of you every single time we do this. Hopefully there's more movie watch parties to come, because it was a blast. I know our friends in Canada and the UK, UK, it was 2 a.m. So sorry about that. But Canada, they couldn't get the film. It wasn't available on Amazon for them. So
I think I might have a workaround for that.
Oh,
I you know what I bet we could do is we could do, don't nobody tell Amazon. Maybe we could do it, but
this is the end of us right now.
We could make it also a big Zoom meeting for our patrons, because we can have hundreds of people in our Zoom and do screen sharing.
Do you think Amazon is literally not listening right now? The feds are on their way to knock on your door.
Alexa's in the other room.
I will not be a part of your federal crime, Scott.
Esther, look, Esther, these are not CGI eyebrows. You keep saying that I have not moved my eyebrows. Here they are. I just don't have wrinkles because I had it all fraxeled.
Laura says code 12 for Shiloh. Thanks, Mom. That's awesome. Lots of people want to do a day trip out to the winery, by the way, in Wineville.
I am all about that. Like, let's set a date and go.
At a table right now, so
Let's do it. Let's do it. All of our locals, anybody who wants to come in for the weekend, get your shot, put on a mask, and let's go.
We could do like little reservations of 6.
Yeah.
All right, you guys have a wonderful night. Thank you for being here. Good night, Scott. See you next week.
Lovely, lovely, lovely.
Bye, everybody.
Bye, guys.